Hi everyone, this is my screencast of the Modality Principle. The Modality Principle states that when a learner is presented with online information, with an image, a graphic, or an animation, that it's best to have the text to be read or narrated rather than just presented as an additional graphic or something for them to read. The idea is that how learners process information through auditory or phonetic or through visual stimulation, that when you have something to look at as well as something to read, you completely overwhelm that visual processing. So when you remove one of those stimulations that you narrate instead of having someone read, that they can then process that information visually and then also phonetically from you reading it. What I have here is a cell image, plant and animal. So this is the animal cell and this is the plant cell. So what I'll be doing is speaking to you as if I would be doing this for my students. In Unit 1, we discover what cells are, and then we also look at what the differences are between plant and animal cells. So this is how I would use this graphic. It'll also be my non-example as well, which I will show you and demonstrate at the end. So hi everyone, this is Miss Potter. I'm looking at an animal cell right now, and we're going to talk about the differences between animal cells and plant cells. So here is your animal cell, and then here is your plant cell. So both cells have things in common. One major thing that they have in common here is our cell membrane. You can look over at the plant cell, you can see that it too has a cell membrane. So cell membranes allow things that are good to enter the cell, such as nutrients and water, and it also allows things like toxins or waste products to exit the cell at any time. Another thing that they have in common is here is our nucleus. This is where our genetic information is stored, our DNA. This is what tells the cell if it's going to be a liver cell, a brain cell, or higher order thinking, if it's going to be a frog or a human. And the same thing goes with our plant cell here, where we have our nucleus. All right, nucleus will tell it if it's going to be a petal or a leaf or a stem cell. So those are the two things that both animal cells and plant cells have in common. So another thing that these cells have in common is this structure right here called the vacuole. You'll notice the size in the animal cell compared to the size of the vacuole on the plant cell. The plant cell is much, much larger. So because the vacuole is essentially storage space for things like water, the animal cell, much smaller. This is the reason why you and I have to drink liquids or water throughout the day, every day, in order to stay hydrated so our body can do the things that it needs to do. If you take a look at the plant cell, how much larger it is, this is the reason why you can go away for the weekend and not really have to worry about your plants dying on you, whereas you really couldn't do that with your dog or your cat. So this vacuole, this storage space for water, is what allows plants to hold on to that liquid and it can use it over time. Now, at the end of that weekend, you'd probably come home and your plant would probably be a little droopy or wilted, and that's because when it's full, this vacuole provides the structure for the plant cell, where if it starts to come down around here, this vacuole is actually going to collapse on itself. So that's what gives it that wilted or droopy look. So those are the similarities between the animal cell and the plant cell. The differences between the plant cell and animal cell, the ones that you need to know, are these right here: the chloroplast and then the cell wall. So the chloroplast is what gives the plants that nice green color because they're filled with something called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is a chemical that allows the process of photosynthesis to occur. Now, we're going to talk about photosynthesis in detail later on, but just know for now that the chloroplasts are what allows plants to make their own food. So they don't have to go out and eat a cheeseburger or salmon or celery sticks or whatever it is that you and I like to eat. They're able to make their own food. This, the cell wall, is what allows that plant to be rigid, to have some structure to it. So if you think about an animal cell, go back to take a look, all right, our cell membrane is what allows things to leave and enter the cell. It's kind of squishy. like we're kind of squishy. Even though you can make a muscle, you can push on your bicep, even if it's really rigid, it has a lot of muscle structure, you're still able to make a dent in it. That's because we do not have a cell wall, we only have the cell membrane. So the plant cell, with the cell wall, it's what gives it rigid structure. If you go up and try to push in on an oak tree, you're not going to have the same effect if you're pushing on your bicep. That's because that cell wall gives it that rigid structure. It's what allows it to stand up nice and tall. It's what allows stems on rose bushes to be able to support the weight of that heavy rose bud. That's what that cell wall allows the plant cells to do, to stay rigid and structured. So that's how this particular graphic could be used as an example of the modality principle. I can also use the same graphic as my non-example because as we look at the same vocabulary words such as vacuole or the chloroplast or the cell wall, if you click on it, it has text, which is great if you need a reference point or something to refer back to. However, this particular text is also way above my kids' learning level. Polysaccharides, we don't ever talk about something like that, or cellulose. So if I was to put this out for my kids to refer back to as a refresher for a test or a quiz, they would be completely lost. They would have no idea what this meant because they would get to a word like polysaccharide and they would just give up. They would never read on, even though it does talk about the same things that I do, it's talking about it in words that they haven't heard of, and so they would completely shut down and they would never use this. Also, it's really annoying noises.